So good morning everyone. Hope you guys are able to see me and hear me clearly. Please type yes if you are able to hear me clearly. Please type yes and send if you are able to hear me clearly. Okay, I am getting yes. Okay, thank you everyone. So today we are going to discuss another very important topic from the same chapter of nutrition, that is protein energy malnutrition. Okay, in last class, last Saturday, we discussed about vitamin D deficiency and rickets. Today we are going to discuss a similar topic from the chapter of nutrition, that is approach to a child with protein energy malnutrition. This is again a very important topic in your exam point of view. You can get lots of questions, both long questions as well as short questions from this topic. So it's very important for you for your exam point of view. Not only for you, but this protein energy malnutrition is really a matter of concern for our society, for our country, and for the whole world. The reason is very simple, that according to WHO data, around 35% of deaths in child below under 5 age of year is related to protein energy malnutrition or due to protein energy malnutrition. So this data is this is worldwide data. In India it is much higher, that is it's around 50%. That is in India around 50% of deaths in child below under 5. In India, around 50% of deaths in under 5 children is due to malnutrition, directly or indirectly. So this is the burden of malnutrition in India, in our society and in the world. According to the NFHS 4 study, that is National Family and Health Survey 4, that was conducted in 2015 and 16. According to that survey, around 40% of children in India are underweight, and around the same proportion, that is around 38 to 40% of children in India are wasted. So this is the burden of malnutrition in India. And stunting and wasting, as you know, are the indicators of malnutrition. Okay, so as a doctor and as a responsible post holder in the society, you should be knowing, or you have to know, how to diagnose a case of malnutrition, how to treat a patient with malnutrition, and how to prevent malnutrition. Okay, as you can see here, okay, so as you can see here, 62 million children under 5 years of age in India are stunted. Okay, and stunting leads to reduced physical and mental development, and good nutrition and care during the mother's pregnancy and up to the child's second birthday can prevent stunting. So this period, that is from mother's pregnancy to the child's second birthday, is called as first 1000 day of a person's life. Okay, because as you know that pregnancy lasts for 9 months, that is around 270 days, and first 2 year of life, that is 365 into 2, that is 730. So 730 plus 270, that is 1000 day. So from conception to your second birthday, that is 1000 day of a life, of your life. And this 1000 day of a person's life is very crucial regarding nutrition. So if a child gets good nutrition and care during this period, then we can prevent stunting and indirectly malnutrition. Okay, so before discussing malnutrition, we will discuss about nutrition, because malnutrition is abnormal nutrition. Okay, so before knowing abnormal nutrition, we should know what is normal nutrition. So before discussing malnutrition, I will discuss about normal nutrition in brief. I cannot discuss in detail, okay, because of time constraint. So we will discuss in brief. So nutrition is the provision to the cells and organisms of the materials necessary in the form of food to support. So nutrition means that providing necessary material like food to the cells for their support. Okay, so there are 7 major classes of nutrients. Those are carbohydrates, fats, fibers, minerals, proteins, water and vitamins. Nutrients are grouped into 2 major categories, that is micronutrients and macronutrients. Macronutrients are carbohydrates, fat and proteins, and macronutrients means they are required in large quantity, whereas micronutrients are minerals and vitamins which are required in very less quantity. Okay. Excuse me, sorry. So good nutrition is the bedrock of child survival, health and development. Well-nourished children are better able to grow and learn, to participate in and contribute to their communities, and to be resilient in the face of disease, disaster and other global crises. As you know that now we are facing a global crisis, a global pandemic in the form of coronavirus, and you must be aware that coronavirus infects all the age groups, but the mortality and morbidity is highest in the persons with less immunity. So a child who is malnourished will be having less immunity, and the chance of mortality and morbidity in corona is more in malnourished children as compared to well-nourished children. So a well-nourished children, okay, is resilient in the face of disease, disaster and other global crises. But for the millions of children suffering from malnutrition, the reality is stark. Every year, around 3 million children die due to undernutrition. You should remember this, that around 3 million children die due to malnutrition worldwide. For millions more, chronic malnutrition will result in stunting, an irreversible condition that literally stunts the physical growth and cognitive growth of the children. So malnutrition not only affects your physical growth, but also your cognitive or your mental growth as well. So what is balanced diet? Balanced diet is defined as nutritionally adequate and appropriate intake of food items that provide all nutrients in required amount and proper proportions. So it is required amount and proper proportions should be present in a balanced diet. Okay, a balanced diet contains 55 to 60% of calories from carbohydrate, 10 to 12% from proteins, and 25 to 30% of calories from fats. And a balanced diet should have all the minerals and vitamins as per RDA. RDA is recommended dietary allowance. Okay. Now, what is malnutrition? Malnutrition includes both undernutrition as well as overnutrition. Malnutrition means abnormal nutrition. So abnormal nutrition may be undernutrition as well as overnutrition. So undernutrition results from inadequate consumption, poor absorption or excessive loss of nutrients. So if a child is taking less amount of nutrients, okay, or even if the child is taking adequate amount of nutrient, but there is problem in the absorption, or even if the child is taking adequate amount and absorption is good, but still there is more loss of nutrients, so the total amount of nutrients will be less. Overnutrition results from excessive intake of specific nutrients. Okay, and this malnutrition theoretically means both undernutrition and overnutrition, but for practical purposes malnutrition means we mean only undernutrition. Okay. Malnutrition is an invisible emergency because malnutrition has million faces. Like there are some examples, like a child who never reaches full height due to poverty, poor sanitation, lack of breastfeeding and limited access to nutritious foods. A young woman who becomes anemic during her pregnancy and gives birth to an underweight baby who later faces developmental delay. a child rendered blind by vitamin A deficiency, a child who becomes obese through overconsumption of low quality food, a desperately thin and wasted child at imminent risk of death. Nearly half of all deaths in children under 5 can be attributed to undernutrition. That I have already told that around 50% of deaths in under 5 children are attributed to undernutrition. This translates into unnecessary loss of about 3 million young lives a year. And malnutrition is a violation of child's right for survival and development, and its consequences often remain invisible until too late. So malnutrition is not only due to lack of food. There are lots of factors affecting malnutrition, or you can say determinant of malnutrition. Those are insufficient protein, energy and macronutrients, frequent infections or diseases, poor care and feeding practices, inadequate health services, and poor water and sanitation. So apart from just lack of food, these are all the factors that affect that cause malnutrition. Okay, in your book, you must be reading O.P. Ghai. In your O.P. Ghai, these determinants are very beautifully explained. So you can go and read the book after this class, okay, to know these determinants in detail. The lack of or inadequate breastfeeding practices alone result in almost 12% of deaths among children under 5. Malnutrition refers to deficiencies, excesses or imbalances in a person's intake or energy and or nutrients as per WHO classification, the WHO definition. The term malnutrition covers two broad groups. That is, one is undernutrition, which includes stunting, that is low height for age, wasting, that is low weight for height, and underweight, that is low weight for age, and macronutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies, like we discussed in our last class, that is vitamin D deficiency, rickets. Okay. The other group is overweight, that is obesity and diet related non-communicable diseases like heart disease, stroke, diabetes and cancer. And that explains why obesity and undernutrition are two sides of a same coin. Now coming to undernutrition. Undernutrition is basically grouped into three categories: wasted, stunted and underweight. So wasting means wasted child has a low weight for height. If a child has low weight for his height, then the child is called as wasted. For example, a child whose height is say 100 centimeter. Okay, so a child of 100 centimeter is expected to be around 15 kg weight normally. I am just giving example. Okay, so a child of 100 cm is expected to have a weight of 15 kg. But if you find a child whose height is 100 centimeter, but his weight is say 10 kg, okay, so that means his weight is less for his height, and that child is called as wasted. Okay, and wasting indicates acute undernutrition. Okay, whereas stunting means short or low height for age. For example, a child of 4 years of age is expected to be of height of 100 centimeter. Okay, but if a child of 4 years of age is say having 80 centimeter of height or 90 centimeter of height, that means his height is less for his age. So the child is stunted, or it is called as stunting. And stunting is an indicator of chronic malnutrition or chronic undernutrition, because when in the initial period of undernutrition, there is a weight loss. Okay, not in the decrease of the height, but when the undernutrition is chronic, apart from weight loss, there is also decrease in the growth of the growth rate of the height. Okay, so in chronic malnutrition, apart from wasting, the child also gets stunting. Okay, so stunting or low height for age is an indicator of chronic malnutrition. Okay, the third term is underweight. Underweight is low weight for age. So taking the same example, if a child of 4 years of age is expected to have say 15 kg of weight, but if that child of 4 year, if you get a child of 4 year who is having 10 kg of weight, that means his weight is less for his age, and that is called as underweight. Okay, and that is that underweight is combined indicator of acute and chronic malnutrition. Got it? So I have more pictures to explain this. You can see in the first picture, the child has normal height and normal weight. So we take the first child as a reference, and we take the first child as normal. Okay. So compare the second child with the first child. You can see the height of the second child is almost same as this first child, but he is wasted. I mean, his weight is very less than this first child. So his weight is less than less for his height. So the child is wasted. In the third picture, the child is, when you compare the child with first picture, his height is less than the first child. So he is stunted. Okay. Whereas in the fourth picture, you can see that the child's height is also less than the first child, as well as he looks very thinner. Okay, he looks thinner and shorter. So he is wasted and as well as stunted. Okay. Here is another pictorial depiction. There are three childs. First we take as normal in red paint. He is neither wasted nor stunted nor underweight. Whereas the second child, the height is normal, but his weight for height as well as weight for age is less. So he is not stunted, but he is wasted as well as underweight. You can see in this third picture with the green paint that the child height is also less for his age, so he is stunted. His weight for age is also less, so he is underweight, but his weight for his height is normal, so the child is not wasted. Hope you guys understand what is wasting, stunting and underweight. Okay. Now classification of undernutrition. There are lots of classification of undernutrition. Again, this comes as a question, as a short question in your exams. WHO classification, IAP classification, Wellcome Trust classification, Waterloo classification, Gomez classification, and these classifications are based on different parameters. Okay, we will see how. So first is classification according to weight for age. So there are few classifications which are based on weight for age. Those are Gomez classification, Jellyfish classification, and IAP classification. Okay, I am not going to discuss in detail. You can read it from your book, or I will send you the PPT. Next classification, which depending upon weight for age, is Wellcome Trust classification. But it apart from weight for age, it also takes into account the presence or absence of edema. Excuse me. So Wellcome Trust classification also considers weight for age, but again it also considers edema into account. Okay, and this is how it classifies undernutrition. Next classification is according to height for age, and this classification are Waterloo classification and McLaren classification. You just remember the name for your exam. Okay. Next classification is according to weight for height. Again, Waterloo classification and McLaren classification. So you can see that Waterloo classification and McLaren classification use both height for age and weight for height classification. Whereas you can see the third classification and the most important classification that we will be discussing, that is WHO classification. Okay, for practical purposes and for diagnosing malnutrition, we use this classification, that is WHO classification. So you can see in the WHO classification that if a child's like weight for height is between -2 to -3 standard deviation, or 70 to 79% of the expected, then the child is said to be having moderate wasting or moderate acute malnutrition. Okay, whereas if the child is having weight for height less than 3 standard deviation or less than 70% of expected weight for height, then the child is said to have severe wasting or severe acute malnutrition. So this is how WHO classifies malnutrition, that is MAM, that is moderate acute malnutrition, or SAM, that is severe acute malnutrition. Okay. Among children, according to WHO, among children in the age range of 6 to 59 months, that is 6 months to 5 years. Okay, in children from 6 months to 5 years, severe acute malnutrition is defined by WHO and UNICEF as following. First is weight for height below 3 standard deviation on the WHO growth standard. So WHO has prepared a growth standard that at this particular height the child should have this particular age, weight. Okay, and if the child is below this 3 standard deviation from the median, okay, in the WHO growth standard, then the child is said to have severe acute malnutrition. Okay, the second criteria is presence of pedal edema. If the child is having bilateral pedal edema in the absence of any systemic disease like heart failure, kidney failure or liver diseases, then again this is the criteria for diagnosing malnutrition. The third criteria is mid upper arm circumference below 11.5 centimeter. So we will discuss about this mid upper arm circumference later in details, but you should know that these are the 3 criteria for diagnosing malnutrition. And for diagnosing malnutrition, a child doesn't have to qualify all the 3 criteria. If even a child qualifies even one of these 3 criteria, then the child is said to have severe acute malnutrition. Okay, but for children below 6 months of age, the MUAC, that is mid upper arm circumference, it is not used as criterion. Mid upper arm circumference is used only for children 6 months to 5 years. Okay, children with SAM have mixed feature of marasmus and kwashiorkor. They have a high risk of death. In addition to debilitating undernutrition, they often have serious infections such as diarrhea, pneumonia, sepsis, malaria and skin infections. So these are the most common comorbid conditions associated with malnutrition. Now, how to assess the nutritional status of a child? Whether to know that the child is having normal nutritional status, or the child is overweight, or the child is underweight. So for assessing, we have few parameters. First is anthropometric measurement, then biochemical assessment, clinical assessment, dietary assessment, epidemiological and ecological evaluation, and functional evaluation. Okay, so we will mainly discuss our anthropometric assessment. In anthropometric assessment, again you have 2 criteria. Okay, 2 group of criteria. One group are called as age dependent criteria, and another group are called as age independent criteria. Again, this is a very important question for your exam. Okay, what are the age independent criteria for assessing malnutrition? You may get short question in your exam. Okay, so the age dependent criteria are weight for age, height for age, and weight for height. So these criteria change according to height, and these criteria are different for different age. Okay, whereas this age independent criteria are same for a particular age range. Okay, not for all age, but a particular age range. You can see, like mid upper arm circumference. Okay, mid upper arm circumference remains same from 6 months of age to 5 years of age. Okay, that is around 16 to 17 centimeter in a normal healthy child. Okay, it does not change from 6 months to 5 years. Okay, so this is called as age independent criteria that do not change with age. Okay, another is skin fold thickness, and another test is called as Bengal test. Okay, we will discuss later. So another age independent indices are these Kanawati and McLaren index, Rao and Singh index, Dugdale, then Quack-Stick, Jellife ratio. This picture is taken from your OP Ghai book of pediatrics, so better you can go and read it from your book. At least you have to remember the names. Okay. So now coming to the most important age independent criteria, that is mid upper arm circumference, that is MUAC. Okay, MUAC. Mid upper arm circumference is widely used measurement because it requires minimum equipment. So for measuring mid upper arm circumference means if you are able to see me, the circumference at this point, okay, midpoint of your upper arm, okay, that is called mid upper arm. So For measuring this portion, the circumference of this portion, you just require a simple measuring tape, right? So it requires minimum equipment, so it is widely used measurement for assessing malnutrition. It increases rapidly in the first 6 months and reaches up to 11 and 60 centimeter, 11 to 16 centimeter, but then it is found to be relatively stable between 6 months to 5 years at a value between 16 to 17 centimeter. So normally the mid upper arm circumference in normal healthy child should be 16 to 17 centimeter. But if any child is having a mid upper arm circumference more than 13.5 centimeter, then the child is normal. Okay, a child of age 6 months to 5 years having mid upper arm circumference more than 13.5 centimeter is said to be normal. Okay, whereas a child who is having mid upper arm circumference less than 11.5 centimeter is suggestive of severe acute malnutrition. Okay, and in between 11.5 and 13.5 is called as moderate or mild malnutrition. Okay, so less than 11.5 is severe malnutrition, 11.5 to 13.5 is moderate or mild malnutrition, and if it is more than 13.5 then it is normal. Okay. So this mid upper arm circumference is measured by two methods. One is by normal that measuring tape method, that is called cross tape method, and second is Sakri's tape method. I will show you what is Sakri's tape. So if you can see this color coded tape, then this is called as Sakri's tape. Okay, and this is used to measure the mid upper arm circumference. You can see that it has three zones. One is red, yellow and green. Red corresponds to less than 11.5, that corresponds to severe acute malnutrition. 11.5 to 12.5 is normal, or 11.5 to 13.5 actually normal. There is some problem here, and if it is more than 13.5 it is normal. Sorry, 11.5 to 13.5 is yellow zone, that is borderline, and more than 13.5 is normal. Okay, that is green zone. And this is how Sakri's tape is used to measure the mid upper arm circumference to diagnose severe acute malnutrition. Another age independent criteria is skin fold thickness. So this is a device called as Herpendon's caliper used to measure the skin fold thickness. Okay, skin fold thickness is an indication of subcutaneous fat. Okay, so in malnutrition what happens? There is a loss of subcutaneous fat, so the skin fold thickness will decrease in malnutrition. So the normal skin fold thickness in children is 10 millimeter or above. Okay, and in a severely malnourished child it is below 6 millimeter. So if it is below 6 millimeter, then we call it as severe acute malnutrition, and if it is above 10 millimeter, then it is normal. Now coming to the clinical features of undernutrition. So these are the basic things, basic anthropometric measurement by which you can diagnose malnutrition. We will discuss other anthropometric measurement when we will be discussing growth and development. There is another topic, a very important topic, that is growth and development. We will discuss in coming classes, and in that classes I will teach you how to measure proper height, how to measure weight, how to measure other parameters. Okay. So now coming to clinical syndrome of undernutrition. Moderate and severe malnutrition is associated with one of the classical syndromes, namely marasmus or kwashiorkor, or with manifestation of both, known as marasmic kwashiorkor. Okay. So marasmus is characterized by severe form of wasting. Acute starvation or acute illness over a borderline nutritional status precipitates this form of undernutrition. You can see that this is a child with marasmus. You can see that there is wasting of shoulders, arms, buttocks and thighs. There is a aged or wrinkled appearance of the face, that is called as monkey faces, because there is a loss of buccal fat. In a healthy child, the cheek is chubby and full, whereas in a malnourished child, in a marasmic child, there is a loss of buccal fat or fat in the cheek. So that bones are prominent on the face, and they have a monkey faces appearance. Okay. Marasmic child with marasmus are alert, active, and irritable. They have no edema, unlike kwashiorkor. Okay, in kwashiorkor the child has edema, but in marasmus the child has no edema. And unlike marasmus, the child has good appetite. In marasmus the child has do not have good appetite, but in a child with marasmus have good appetite. And there is also a sign called as baggy pants appearance. Okay, so baggy pants appearance means in buttocks, the buttocks is mainly composed of what? Muscle and protein. So muscle and fat, protein and fat. So when a child is malnourished, there is a loss of muscle and fat from the buttock. So the skin of the overlying the buttocks get wrinkled and they hang. So that is called as baggy pant appearance in the buttocks. Okay, and this is the sign of marasmus. Now coming to kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor is mainly seen in the child of age 1 to 4 years. Child with kwashiorkor are edematous. They are lethargic, unlike the marasmic child who are alert and irritable. They have hugely distended abdomen due to fatty liver. They may show flax sign. Flax sign is seen in the hairs. Flax sign is there is alternate band of hypopigmentation and normal pigmentation in the hair. Okay, so if you pluck a hair of a child, kwashiorkor child, and see the hair, then you can see under microscope that they have alternative band of hypopigmentation and normal pigmentation in the hair, and that is called as flax sign. Okay. Again, you can see some skin changes like flaky paint and enamel spots. Flaky paint appearance is like areas of hypopigmentation, desquamation, and hyperpigmentation in areas of buttocks, thigh, and groin. This is called as flaky paint appearance. Okay. Now, before managing severe malnutrition, we should know how to manage mild and moderate malnutrition. Excuse me. Mild and moderate malnutrition accounts for more than 80% of malnutrition associated with deaths. The mainstay of treatment is provision of adequate amounts of protein and energy. Energy of at least 150 kilocalorie per kg per day should be given, and protein intake of at least 3 gram per kg per day should be given to treat mild and moderate malnutrition. The best measure of efficacy for treatment of mild and moderate malnutrition is weight gain. So if you are treating a mild and moderate malnutrition by giving this energy and protein, then you can assess that whether the child is responding to your treatment or not by seeing the weight gain. If the child is gaining weight, that means your child is responding to your treatment. Okay. Now coming to child with severe acute malnutrition. Okay, so you have diagnosed by your anthropometric measurement, okay, that a child is having severe acute malnutrition. Now before managing, you should assess these following things, that is complications, whether that child with SAM has any of these following complications or not. The complications are severe edema, low appetite, medical complications like any cardiovascular, any renal, any GI complication or not, or any systemic infections, okay, or any or one or more dangerous signs as per IMNCI. IMNCI you must have read in your PSM. Also we will discuss IMNCI when we will discuss health programs in pediatrics, but you must be knowing what are the dangerous signs in children as per IMNCI. Those are like unconsciousness, lethargicness, refusal to feed, okay, persistent diarrhea, persistent vomiting, high grade fever, respiratory distress. So these are danger signs in children. Okay. So if a child is having any one of these, you should see whether a child is having any one of this complication or not. Okay. Now, if the child doesn't have any of this complication, then that child is classified as uncomplicated SAM. Okay, or as having uncomplicated SAM. And a child with uncomplicated SAM is supervised and managed at home. Whereas if the child has any one of this complication, okay, any one of these 4 complications, then we classify the child as having complicated SAM. Okay, and as children with complicated SAM has to be managed in a health facility or in a hospital. Okay. So first we will discuss how to manage a case of uncomplicated SAM at home. So first is nutrition therapy. So homemade foods or RUTF. RUTF is ready to use therapeutic food. Okay. So we should give home foods or RUTF, and also you should continue breastfeeding. Okay. I'm sorry, I think I should take some rest for 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. So the feeds should provide at least 175 kilocalorie of energy per kg per day, and the frequency of feeds should be 6 to 8 times per day. Other treatments at home includes oral amoxicillin for 5 days, because children with severe acute malnutrition is more prone to infection, and they are expected to have infection. So they should be treated with amoxicillin. Okay. Apart from that, mega dose of vitamin A should be given. Okay, we will see what is the dose in our next slide. Apart from that, albendazole 400 mg in single dose should be given in a child of more than 2 years of age, and 200 mg should be given in a child less than 2 years of age. This is for deworming. Okay. And age appropriate vaccine should be given, because as you know that malnourished child are more prone to infective diseases, so the child should be appropriately vaccinated so as to prevent them from these infective diseases. Next is sensory stimulation. Sensory stimulation means usually a child with SAM are very lethargic. Okay, they are not active. So you should stimulate them by play, physical activities and interaction, so that that will improve their mood, and they will take more calorie and more food. Okay, so this is called a sensory stimulation, because a lethargic child, a child who is sick, he will not take adequate amount of food. So you have to stimulate you have to give the child sensory stimulation. Okay. Next is supervision and support. So supervision and support of the family and the child has to be taken care of by health workers and counselor, and by providing adequate amount of RUTF. Okay. Next is monitoring by health workers like ASA, Anganwadi workers and ANM. Next we will discuss management of complicated SAM in hospital. Okay. So you have to admit a child with complicated SAM, as we have already discussed, and now that you have admitted the child in the hospital, you have to manage the child. So how to manage? So the management of SAM in hospital is done in 2 phases and in 10 steps. Okay. So the 2 phases are, first phase is stabilization phase, and the second phase is called as rehabilitation phase. Okay. In stabilization phase, what we do, we treat the complications. Okay. And we help the child to restore the homeostasis, like the electrolyte imbalance, okay, and dehydration, infection. We try to manage that in the first stabilization phase, and we try to manage the complication here. And once the child is stabilized, okay, free from any complications, and is able to take adequate diet, then we go to rehabilitation phase. And this rehabilitation phase deals with rebuilding wasted tissues and may take several weeks. Okay, so the first, that stabilization phase takes around 2 to 7 days, that is first week, 1 week, whereas the rehabilitation phase takes many weeks. Okay, because in rehabilitation phase we try to rebuild the wasted muscle and fats. Okay, so here you can see the diagram. And this is again taken from your Ghai. You can see from that book, OP Ghai. Okay, so there is a stabilization phase lasting for around 0 to 7 days, and second is rehabilitation phase that lasts from second week up to around 6 weeks or more. Okay, and the 10 steps of management of severe acute malnutrition. Again, this is a very important question for your exam. Okay, what are the 10 steps of management of severe acute malnutrition? So you can see hypoglycemia, management of hypoglycemia, hypothermia, dehydration, management of electrolyte imbalance, treatment of infection, management of micronutrient deficiency, then starting cautious feeding, then help in catch-up growth, sensory stimulation, and prepare for follow-up. So this is the 10 step, and we will discuss this 10 step one by one. So first is hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia in older children is defined as blood glucose level less than 54 milligram per deciliter. Okay, so any child who is admitted with SAM in your hospital, you have to test the blood glucose level. Okay, and if you cannot test the blood glucose level due to any reason, okay, then you should assume that the child is having hypoglycemia. Okay, and if you test, okay, and the blood glucose level is more than 54, then the child is not having hypoglycemia, and less than 54, that means the child is having hypoglycemia. Okay, so hypoglycemia, hypothermia, and infections occurs as triad. These three things we will discuss again in our next slides, that hypoglycemia, hypothermia, and infections. Infections causes hypothermia and hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia may lead to hypothermia. Hypothermia may lead to hypoglycemia. Okay, and so these three things act as a triad. In a child with malnutrition. Okay, so how to treat if a child is having hypoglycemia? Hypoglycemia can be two types. One is asymptomatic hypoglycemia, and another is symptomatic hypoglycemia. Asymptomatic means the child is having blood sugar level less than 54 milligram per deciliter, but he is not showing any symptom of hypoglycemia. Okay, so in that case we have to give 50 ml of 10% glucose or sucrose solution orally if the child is taking orally, or by nasogastric tube if the child is not able to take orally. So if the child is able to swallow, then we should give orally, and if the child is not able to swallow, then we should insert a nasogastric tube from nose into the stomach, and we should give this fluid by nasogastric tube. Okay, and this should be followed immediately by the first feed. Okay, and what is the first feed? The feed should be started with starter F75 every 2 hourly, day and night. Okay, so F75 diet is the diet that has to be given to a child with severe acute malnutrition every 2 hourly, day and night. That means 12 times a day. Okay, we will discuss what is F75 later. Next is, if the child is having symptomatic hypoglycemia, then you should give 10% dextrose IV, that is intravenously. If the child is having symptomatic hypoglycemia like convulsion or lethargic, unconsciousness, okay, then you cannot give orally or like by nasogastric tube. You have to give IV fluid for immediate action. Okay, so the IV dose of dextrose is 5 ml per kg of 10% dextrose. Okay, and this should be immediately followed by 50 ml of dextrose or sucrose solution by nasogastric tube, which we were used to give in asymptomatic hypoglycemia. Again, this should be followed by starter F75 every 2 hourly, day and night. Okay, so the difference between symptomatic and asymptomatic is, in symptomatic hypoglycemia we give intravenous 10% dextrose at the rate of 5 ml per kg, single dose, followed by this. Okay. And also we should start appropriate antibiotic if a child is having hypoglycemia, because we expect that if a child is having hypoglycemia, then the child must be having infection. Okay, so you should start antibiotics. So how to prevent hypoglycemia? It should be prevented by feeding 2 hourly, starting immediately. Okay, a malnourished child should be fed every 2 hourly, and we should prevent hypothermia. Again, because we have discussed that hypothermia causes hypoglycemia. Now, this is the what is, you must be wondering what is F75, what is F100. So this is the answer. F75 means a diet that contains 75 kilocalorie of energy per 100 ml. Okay, that is called as F75 diet. Okay, and there is another diet formula that is called as F100 diet. And F100 diet means this contains 100 kilocalorie of energy per 100 ml. So this is called as F100. F75 diet contains 0.9 gram of protein per 100 ml, whereas F100 diet contains 2.9 gram of protein per 100 ml. Okay. Again, this thing is explained very beautifully in your book, that is OPGHAI. So you should go and read the book after this class, because I cannot explain everything in detail because of time constraint. Sorry. Excuse me. Next is hypothermia. So how to manage a child with hypothermia? Hypothermia is defined as rectal temperature less than 35.5 degrees Celsius or less than 95.5 degree Fahrenheit, or axillary temperature less than 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degree Fahrenheit. Okay. So we should always measure blood glucose and screen for infection in presence of hypothermia. As you have already discussed, that hypoglycemia and infection and hypothermia occurs as triad. So in a child with hypothermia, we should also screen for hypoglycemia and infection. And if a child is having hypothermia, then it should be treated with clothing the child with warm clothes and ensure that the head is also covered, because in children the head accounts for most of the surface area of the body. So heat loss from the head is more in children. So not only you should cover the body, but also you should cover the head to prevent heat loss. Okay. Again, you should provide heat using overhead warmers if the child is small, or you can give it do it by skin to skin contact or by a heat convector. Okay. You should avoid rapid rewarming of a hypothermic child, because this may lead to disequilibrium. Okay. And you should start feed immediately in a child with hypothermia, because you know that when you take any food, any carbohydrate or any food, then that is get digested in our metabolic pathway, and in that pathway heat is generated. So feeding generates heat from our body. So you should start feeding as immediately as possible in a hypothermic child. Okay. And as you know that hypothermic child is expected to be having infection, so you should give appropriate antibiotic. So how to prevent hypothermia? The child should be placed in a draft-free area. The child should always be well covered. We may place the child in contact with the mother's bare chest or abdomen, that is called as skin to skin contact. The child should be fed every 2 hourly, starting immediately after admission. Okay. Next is dehydration. See, the important thing about dehydration in some children is it is very difficult to assess dehydration in some children. if you have read dehydration, then you must be knowing that we assess dehydration by looking at the shrunken eyes or delayed skin pinch and these things. Okay, but in some children, as such, due to loss of fat, they have sunken eyes and they have wrinkled skin. So in some children, if a child has sunken eyes and wrinkled skin, you cannot say whether it is due to dehydration or due to malnutrition. So in children, you should assess dehydration by patient's consciousness level, whether the patient is thirsty or not, and how the patient, whether the patient is passing urine or not, or from the pulse volume. Okay, so you have to assess the dehydration like this, not not by looking skin pinch and shrinkage of eye. Okay, shrunken eye. You should assume that all children with severe acute malnutrition with watery diarrhea have some dehydration. Okay, not severe dehydration, but some dehydration. And low blood volume can coexist even with edema. So even if a child with kwashiorkor may have low blood volume. So if a child is edematous or having kwashiorkor, doesn't mean that he has the blood volume is high in that child. Okay. So treatment of dehydration, use reduced osmolarity ORS. You know what is reduced osmolarity ORS? That contains osmolarity of 245 millismol per liter with high potassium and low sodium. Okay, and along with ORS, you should also give potassium supplement for rehydration and maintenance. Okay, because a child with malnutrition are deficient in potassium, so you should give more potassium in some children. The amount of rehydration fluid that you give should depend upon how much the child wants and how much this child is passing stool, the volume of the stool loss, and whether the child is vomiting or not. Okay. In a child with dehydration, initiate feeding immediately. Okay, every 2 to 3 hours. Use F75 formula, alternate hours along with reduced osmolarity ORS. So if a child is having some dehydration, then you should give ORS along with F75 in alternative hour. Okay. So to prevent dehydration, give reduced osmolarity ORS at 5 to 10 ml per kg after each water stool to replace the water losses. So if the child is vomiting or passing stool, then after every stool and every vomiting, you should give 5 to 10 ml of kg of ORS to replace the loss of water by vomit and stool. Okay. And if the child is breastfed, you should continue breastfeeding. Initiate refeeding with starter F75 formula as soon as possible. Now, management of electrolyte imbalance. Apart from protein calorie deficiency, the child with malnutrition also have electrolyte imbalance and nutrition deficiency. Okay, so potassium deficiency is one of the most common deficiency in severe acute malnutrition children with SAM. So you should supplement potassium at the rate of 3 to 4 milli equivalent per kg per day. Okay, at least for 2 weeks. Okay, to replace the potassium loss. And for magnesium, you should give 50% of magnesium sulfate. Okay, 0.3 ml per kg of 50% magnesium sulfate on day 1, and give extra magnesium, that is 0.8 to 1.2 milli equivalent per kg daily for next 14 days to 1 month. Okay. There is excessive body sodium exists even though the plasma sodium may be low. So you should give decreased salt in diet. You should give more potassium but less sodium diet. Okay, because in children with SAM there is increased intracellular sodium. Okay, so you should avoid giving sodium, and you should even give low sodium diet to children with SAM. Now next is infections. So multiple infections are common. So we should assume that serious infection is present in a child, and we should treat accordingly, because malnourished child are immunocompromised, so they are more prone to infection. So usual signs of infections like fever are often absent in child with malnutrition. Majority of bloodstream infections are due to gram-negative bacteria. In children, most of the children with malnutrition, most of the infections are due to gram-negative bacteria. So you should plan your antibiotic accordingly. Okay. And apart from infection, again you should treat hypothermia and hypoglycemia. Okay. And because these are markers of severe infection. So if you find that a child is having infection, then you should treat with first line therapy, that is parenteral ampicillin for first 2 days, followed by oral amoxicillin for next 5 days. Okay, this is how you give a 7 days course with either gentamicin or amikacin. Okay, for 7 days. So either ampicillin for 2 days, followed by amoxicillin next 5 days, with either gentamicin or amikacin. If no improvement occurs with this treatment, then after 48 hours, then you should change the antibiotic to cephalosporin, that is either cefotaxime or ceftriaxone. Okay. And if you identify any specific infection due to any specific organism, then you should give appropriate antibiotic according to that organism. Okay. Coming to management of micronutrient deficiency, as I have said that children with SAM have, apart from deficiency of protein and carbohydrate, they have also deficiency of macronutrients like vitamin and minerals. So you should also give vitamins and minerals to them. You should give twice the recommended daily allowance of various vitamins and minerals. Okay. So the general formula is, see, RDA means this is the amount of nutrients a normal individual requires, but a children with SAM requires more nutrient because he has depletion, okay, of this nutrition. So those child requires twice the recommended daily allowance. Okay, so you should give this amount. For vitamin A, okay, the dose is different for different age. For child more than 1 year, you should give 2 lakh international unit. For child 6 months to 12 months, you should give 1 lakh international unit. And for child less than 6 months, you should give 50,000 international unit of vitamin A on day 1. Okay. Next is folic acid. Folic acid you should give 5 milligram on day 1, followed by 1 milligram per kg, 1 milligram per day for at least next 14 days. Okay. Zinc 2 milligram per kg per day. Copper 0.2 to 0.3 milligram kg per day. Iron 3 milligram per kg per day once the child starts gaining weight. Okay, you should note this point that iron should not be given from day 1. Okay, iron is added only when the child starts gaining weight and child start taking adequate diet, because iron has a tendency, iron formulations have tendency for GI irritation. So if a child is already having diarrhea, vomiting and poor appetite, and if you give iron to that child, it will precipitate. And the second most important reason is iron, when taken orally, that generates free radical in the intestine, and these free radicals again damage our intestine, and again it will cause poor absorption. So iron should not be given up to second week. Okay, it can be started only after second week, not in first week. Okay. Now next is initiate feeding. So feeding should be initiated as soon as possible by F75 diet, and the total fluid recommended is 130 ml per kg per day. Okay, and calorie is around also 130 ml per kg per day. If the child is having severe edema, then the fluid should be reduced to 100 ml per kg per day. Continue breastfeeding as and when required, as and when the child wants. So starting feed should be F75 starter diet. Okay, and it should be given 2 hourly. If there is persistent diarrhea, give cereal based low lactose F75 diet and starter diet. Again, in your book Opighai, it is written how to prepare F75 diet, how to prepare low lactose F75 diet. You can go and read in the book after this class. Next is catch up growth. So now we have given all the nutrients to the baby, and we have treated all the complications of the child with malnutrition. Now you have to make the child grow normally like a normal child, because till now the child was not growing normally as a normal child. That is why the child suffered malnutrition. So now our aim is to improve the growth rate of the child, okay, both weight, improvement of growth and height, so as to grow normally as a normal child, okay, and that is called as catch-up growth, okay. So once the appetite returns in 2 to 3 days, encourage higher intake, okay. So higher intake will help in catch-up growth. Increase volume offered at each feed and decrease the frequency of feed to 6 feed per day. Initially, as you can see that we are giving 2 hourly, that means 12 feed per day. So you should gradually decrease it to 6 feet per day, and you should increase the volume of the food, okay. And you should continue breastfeeding. If the child is of breastfeeding age, then breastfeeding should be continued as and when the child wants, okay. So from gradual transition, you should make gradual transition from F75 to F100 diet. As you all know, and we have discussed, that F75 contains 75 kilocalorie and 0.9 gram of protein, whereas F100 diet contains higher calorie, that is 100 kilocalorie and 3 gram, around 2.9 gram or 3 gram of protein, okay. So we should start with low calorie and low protein diet, and we should increase to high calorie high protein diet, okay. Increase calories up to 150 to 200 kilocalorie and protein from 4 to 6 gram per kg per day. Next is sensory stimulation. Sensory stimulation means age appropriate structured play therapy for at least 15 to 30 minutes per day, okay. We have discussed sensory stimulation in managing home-based malnutrition. And next, the final step is prepare for follow-up. So now you have done all the interventions for managing this managing the malnutrition, and you expect that the child will be treated of malnutrition and will catch up growth, okay. So now when the child meets the discharge criteria, then we should prepare for follow-up. So what are the discharge criteria? So when we will discharge a patient with severe acute malnutrition, so these are the discharge criteria. Discharge criterion for all infants and children is 15% of weight gain and no signs of any illness. So there should be at least 15% weight gain from the admission weight, okay. So if a child was admitted with 10 kg, okay, then he should be at least 11.5 kg for discharge, okay. You cannot discharge before the child is has weight of 11.5 kg, okay. And the child should be free from all illness or infections or illness, okay. The second criteria is edema has resolved. That means edema is completely subsided in a kwashiorkor child. Third is that the child has satisfactory weight gain for 3 consecutive days of at least 5 gram per kg per day, okay. And this is another very important criteria. So you should measure the weight of the child every day in grams, okay, and you should ensure that the child is gaining weight 5 gram per kg per day for 3 consecutive days before discharge, okay. Next is all infections and other medical complications have been treated. If the child is having any infection, okay, any respiratory infection, any GI infection, any UTI, then you should complete the antibiotic therapy, and that infection must be resolved or treated, okay. The child is provided all the macronutrients as you have discussed, and the child is immunized up to date or as per the age or as per the immunization schedule. You should ensure that the child is immunized, okay. And the child is eating an adequate amount of nutritious food that mother can prepare at home, okay. So these are the criteria for discharge, and the child should qualify all these criteria before discharge. Okay. Next नहीं हो रहा है. Okay. So once the child has qualified the discharge criteria, you should prepare for discharge and follow up. So average stay in a hospital setting varies between 10 to 15 days. However, the child requires follow up for another 4 to 6 months for full recovery. Okay. A child must become accustomed to eating family meals. Treatment of helminthic infections should be given at all children before discharge. Like as you have discussed that we should give albendazole 400 milligram to all children with severe acute malnutrition. Regular checkup should be made at 2 weeks in the first month, then monthly until weight for height reaches more than or up to -1 standard deviation or above. Okay. But despite giving this treatment, okay, some of the child do not respond and they do not gain weight, and that is called as failure to respond. So primary failure to respond is indicated by failure to get weight, failure to regain appetite by day 4, failure to start losing edema by day 4, presence of edema on day 10, and failure to gain at least 5 gram per kg per day by day 10. Whereas secondary failure to respond is indicated by failure to gain at least 5 gram per kg per day for consecutive days during the rehabilitation phase. So this is called as primary and secondary failure. Okay, that means the child is not responding to our treatment, and we have to search for other causes of malnutrition and treat accordingly. Okay. Severe acute malnutrition. So we discussed severe acute malnutrition management in child aged 6 months to 5 years. So in children who is under 6 months and is having malnutrition, infants less than 6 months of age, and any of the following complicating factors should be admitted for inpatient care. Any serious medical complication, clinical condition, recent weight loss or failure to gain weight, ineffective feeding, okay, any pitting edema, any medical or social issue, or infant less than 6 months of age with SAM should receive same general medical care as infant with severe acute malnutrition who are 6 months of age. Okay, the diagnostic criteria for SAM differs in children below 6 months and above 6 months, but the management criteria is same for all the children. Okay, in diagnosing the SAM children, you cannot use MUAC as a criteria. Okay, mid-upper arm circumference cannot be used as a diagnosing criteria of SAM in children less than under 6 months. Okay. So thank you. This was all about management of protein energy malnutrition in brief. It's already 10:15. So you can ask if you have any questions, or better you can take questions in next class.